we'll just make a little brief stopover.
U.S. President Donald Trump has once again indicated that Cuba could be next after military action in Iran, although he described it as a little brief stopover. After again calling Cuba a failed nation, Trump told reporters at the White House on June 4th that the Caribbean island nation had sort of collapsed.
It sort of collapsed, and we're going to handle that as soon as we've finished. I like to do one thing at a time, and we'll take care of the Islamic Republic of Iran. And as soon as that's done on our way back, we'll just make a little brief stopover.
While Trump, for his part, has on multiple occasions suggested that Cuba could be next on the U.S. hit list, his administration has sought to downplay those remarks in recent months following the fallout over the war on Iran. Washington had in January threatened additional tariffs on imports from any country that, directly or indirectly, supplies oil to Cuba. The United States has announced new sanctions targeting Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel and some of his immediate family members, alongside members of the Castro family, in Washington's latest effort to increase pressure on its communist-led neighbor. Those targeted include the son and a grandson of former Cuban President Raúl Castro, who no longer holds an official position but remains a key power broker on the island. Díaz-Canel, his wife and stepson have also been sanctioned by the U.S., along with the Ministry of the Revolutionary Armed Forces and several other entities. In addition, a travel agency, a mining company, and other entities linked to the Cuban government are now also reportedly subject to American restrictions. While Cuba has been under a U.S. trade embargo since 1962, Trump has significantly increased pressure in recent months, including measures aimed at restricting fuel supplies and threats to take over the island by force. Washington argues that Cuba's communist government poses a threat to American national security. Trump, however, has denied that the latest U.S. sanctions were intended to accelerate the collapse of the already grappling Cuban economy. Notably, the latest round of sanctions follow a U.S. murder indictment against Raúl Castro and previous sanctions imposed on a military conglomerate that is believed to be in control of much of Cuba's economy. Addressing the media at the White House, Trump insisted that he wants Cuba to be a nicely run country that can feed its people. Meanwhile, Cuban President Miguel Díaz-Canel has accused the Trump team of attempting to strengthen the blockade and scenario of conflict between Cuba and the United States. Díaz-Canel asserted in a recent social media post that Havana would resist what he described as the aggressiveness and perversity of the Yankee government and the imperialist onslaught. Cuban Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez, for his part, has also criticized the U.S. sanctions, calling them vile, and insisting they would be met with greater unity and determination from our people. Russian President Vladimir Putin, meanwhile, acknowledged that Moscow had held contacts with the Trump administration regarding the situation in Cuba, which has faced a worsening economic crisis since the start of the year. While Putin confirmed the exchanges when questioned by a reporter, the Russian leader, however, added that he did not wish to comment further on the discussions.
Что касается контактов по кубинскому вопросу, я отвечу прямо на прямой вопрос с вашей стороны. Вы спросили, были ли у нас контакты с американской администрацией по кубинскому вопросу. Были. Ну, я не хотел бы дальше комментировать. Как вы знаете, мы поставили танкер с нефтепродуктами на Кубу. Вот, Куба дружественная нам страна на протяжении десятилетий. Традиционно складывались отношения. Администрация США знает об этом. Наши контакты с Кубой продолжаются.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said on June 4th that Cuba has technocrats who are prepared to negotiate changes to the island's governance. Responding to a question on potential interlocutors within the Cuban government, Rubio told a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing that there are clearly individuals within the apparatus of power in that country that understand that what they have now is not sustainable and needs to be fixed. Rubio, however, added that those individuals either don't have power, or even if they have power, they don't know how to implement the changes sought by the United States. Rubio's remarks came as Washington has repeatedly insisted that the U.S. wants a democratic transition in Cuba, a more open economy, and a reduction in ties with America's adversaries. Meanwhile, China has accused the U.S. of using invented allegations to justify its case against Cuba after Rubio told senators he needed no new evidence to tie the island to violent leftist groups across the Western Hemisphere. Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Mao Ning called on Washington to heed the call of the international community and immediately stop all its blockade, sanctions, coercion, and pressure against Cuba. As tensions rose, CIA Director John Ratcliffe traveled to Havana in mid-May, and representatives of the American and Cuban militaries met at the gates of the U.S. military base at Guantanamo Bay just last week. The developments unfolded as a South Florida expert recently told CBS News. The latest sanctions targeting senior Cuban officials and their family members are part of the Trump administration's strategy to pressure Havana into negotiations. The measures come as Cuba continues to face severe economic difficulties, including widespread power outages and shortages of basic goods. Some analysts say the Trump administration's latest move reflects growing frustration in Washington, following seemingly inconclusive recent diplomatic efforts. Observers have warned that additional U.S. sanctions may fail to achieve their objectives and could instead deepen the confrontation between the two sides. Analyst Frank Mora described the U.S. policy as political blindness that would ultimately harm the Cuban people, according to CBS News. While tensions remain elevated, Mora told the American media network that the likelihood of U.S. military action against Cuba remains low. However, Trump, for his part, remarked on June 4th that U.S. forces could stop by Cuba after operations in Iran, reviving speculation about Washington's intentions towards the island.